topic is on financing a business, of interest to most anybody who is starting off a business that has any significant startup costs. So Shankar is going to talk about it, and he will introduce himself in a moment. But let me just give you a quick overview of who SCORE is. SCORE is a national organization. We're a nonprofit organization. And our mission is to help small businesses succeed in a couple of different ways. First is through mentoring. We provide free business advice, sometimes just once in a while, and I've been working with some clients for a couple of years as they grow their business. So, but that's a free one-on-one, usually one-on-one or two-on-one mentoring. The other is by offering business training programs, such as today's session, for instance. We have 2 or 3 webinars a week, so on a huge range of topics related to starting or operating your business. And the third is on our website, we have a large number of templates. We have a business plan, a cash flow plan, contract templates, that sort of thing. So all of these are available on SCORE. For the mentoring, typically there are 10,000 volunteers nationally. And what typically happens in the mentor sessions are typically about an hour long. And sometimes we meet with clients, every other week, something like that. Sometimes it's monthly, sometimes it's, it's essentially whenever is convenient for you, for the client. In order to get a mentor, go on to www.score.org, and you can put in the zip code and ask if you want to be matched by zip code, or down below is score.org/Worcester, Western Massachusetts, Boston, and so on. But what that will result in is that we have people who do the intake, and they will ask, in the intake form is ask a couple of questions about what type of help you're interested in. And then we try to match you with a mentor who has expertise in that particular field. And evaluation, conversation, and then as we get a little better sense of what you're looking for and what we can offer, we may well get you working with anyone from a wide pool of mentors who have different levels of expertise. Today's format, you can add questions to the Q&A on the online chat. Oh, we're going to be recording this also. We found at score.org under local workshop / previously recorded. You can see it on the lower right-hand corner of the slide here. As I said, yeah, it's going to be recorded. If you have questions, you can do Q&A, or else just put it on the chat, and we'll we'll probably do the questions after the presentation. So let me turn this over now to Jeff, who's going to give a couple of comments about his role at Middlesex Savings Bank. And we wanted to have somebody from a bank here who does on a daily basis commercial loans, because obviously that's one of the major ways of financing your business. So I thought it'd be good. We thought it would be helpful to have somebody here who essentially represents the type of person and who you would be talking with if you were to ask for a loan. So why don't I turn it over to Jeff now, and I'll stop sharing. Here we go.
Well, thank you, Steve, and thank you, SCORE and Shankar, for putting on today's program. I'm sure it'll be great. I just want to take 2 seconds to tell you a little about the bank. Middlesex Savings, we just celebrated our birthday last month. We're 189 years old today. We look pretty good given our age. We're headquartered in Metro West in Natick, but we serve Metro West clients throughout Massachusetts, and have recently opened, actually in late 23, our new branch in Worcester, Mass. Although we've done lending and worked in the area before, we're very happy to expand into Worcester and looking to grow there as we go. We work with a variety of local businesses on a variety of financing solutions, and we are very, deeply ingrained in the communities in which we serve and provide charitable contributions in a number of ways to the communities. Generally, when we land in a community, well, we tend to stick there. Dave Bennett on the call and his business banking team, they bring significant lending experience to a variety of businesses throughout Massachusetts. They oftentimes serve as a lender for a number of clients, but many times they serve as a trusted advisor because they're ingrained in the communities in which they work and they serve and are connected to a number of centers of influences and other types of businesses that might help small business owners get going and or sustain success. So Dave's team is fantastic at working with a variety of clients. Encourage you to, if you're not already talking with Dave's team, to reach out at the appropriate time. With that, I'd certainly turn it back over to Shankar to get our program going today.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. We may have to just a minute. Okay, Steve, can you see the screen?
Yes, I can. Yep, all good.
Okay. All right. I'm Shankar Hegde. As I said before, I worked in a big company and then a small company. Then I started my own company. So I'm familiar with all the challenges of starting and growing a business. And as it happens, one of the challenge is getting funding. Unless you are independently wealthy, you need some kind of a funding from a source. So before I get to the funding sources, let me just start off with why do people start business? And then there are a couple of ways to start a business. Many people think starting business means starting from scratch. So I'll tell you a couple of more ways to start a business. And then no matter what kind of business you are in, what type of business you are in, you still need funding. So then I will go over the financing a business. There are a couple of categories of funding. I will go over the owner financing, then what I call a set of funding sources I call ecosystems. Then debt financing, the people in Middlesex Bank are obviously in the debt financing, funding in the form of a loan. Then there is another way of financing is equity. Then I will go over some of the funding statistics, means how most of the people are using the funds they received. Then we'll open up to questions and answers. Why do people start business? Obviously, they believe that they have a product or service that will be valuable to somebody else so that they can get money in return. And many times they want to be their own boss. There is nothing wrong with it. And they want to build something. They want to build something and leave it as a legacy for the next generation. It could be a product or a service again. And want to get rich. That may not be the reason to start the company, but once you become successful, you will hopefully get rich or at least make a good living. And want to build a lifestyle business. Nowadays, that has become very popular. YouTuber, right? I mean, you see so many people making a decent amount of money by being a YouTuber, whether it could be a cooking show, whether it could be travel, anything. I see lots of people making lots of money. So that is kind of a lifestyle business, and you can be doing good with that kind of a business as well. Start from scratch is one way, everybody knows about it. And then in addition to that, you can buy an existing business. Or you can license a business or a brand. It's called franchising. Okay, starting from scratch, the big advantage is you have total control. You make all decisions. You keep all the profits. That's the biggest upside. The disadvantage is you have to have what they call operating system, the software. Most of the systems you cannot run without some kind of a software system. And then, as probably you're aware, there is the highest failure rate is from where you start from the scratch. And also it could take years before you make money. And I will go through lots of funding sources, but once you get onto that business of getting the money, it's not easy. And you will soon realize that your funding options are pretty limited. But I don't want you to discourage. You have to keep at it and you will get to where you want to be. Buying an existing business is advantage. You know the cash flow, you know the historical results. And also if you want to get some funding, there's attract to the business people who will lend you the money. And there is established location and established customer base. And then, as I said, software systems are already probably in place. And the disadvantage is you have to really go with what the buyer wants you to have, the cash flow. And you won't know what is the real cash flow. You have to trust him. And you won't know why the seller is planning to sell. And then the employees may detect, may defect. They may go with the seller. And so you have to train and you have to find and hire and train new employees. Now, the franchising, I think, is probably one of the better ways to go about. And you have heard of a lot of this franchising, the big ones, McDonald's, Burger King, Subway, they're all kind of franchises. There is a name recognition, there is a proven business system to start. Then already there is a training and support is given to you by the franchise, by the person who is selling you the franchise. It's really on your own, but never alone. I mean, that's the key here. And the failure rate is pretty low. And the disadvantage here is the structured operating systems means you have to run the way it is. And obviously, territory restrictions. You can sell your service only in that territory geographically. And then also, obviously, you have to go give them the ongoing royalty payment. That means you cannot keep all the money you get. Now, we'll start with the financing. The best way is to start putting your own money in the game, skin in the game. So you have to dip into your savings or other liquid assets. And even though I put in a credit card, that's the last way you have to go about, unless you can pay the credit card money owing to the credit card on time. And better alternative is home equity if you have if you have a home and if you have an equity built into the home, or you can get some personal loans as well. And there is nothing wrong with asking your relatives and friends. You are not asking for a charity. You tell them that you will get a loan from them and you will pay the ongoing or even a better interest rate. Or you can tell them that you will give them a piece of your business, which is equity. So I think, that is another way of getting more money into your business account. So any of these things is the first go about. So you need to try this first before you go to the next step. Okay, there are a bunch of things in a business plan competition. There are many of the business plan competitions are open. Most of them are open to the students or alumni, and some are open to the friends of alumni as well. But the grants are open to almost everybody. I will go through some of those grants. Then there are a set of what I call incubators and accelerators. And then you might have heard about the crowdfunding, and I will go through some of that crowdfunding as well. Okay, business plan competition is very popular at universities. And for the people in this area, in the New England, in the Boston area, MIT is one of the biggest source of revenue or the startup capital. There are lots of competitions in MIT. The big one is a 100K entrepreneurship competition, but there are so many of them. You can go into the MIT website Harvard Business School has one, Babson has, Dartmouth has, almost every university has, BU, UMass. The last one, I have a link here, by the way, and I think Steve has cut and paste the link in the chat. U.pitch is open for anybody. It's not for students alone, and it's private. So you can apply on that one as well. Then there are other organizations called American Chemical Society, has a very low budget for the business plan competition. IEEE has one. Draper has competition for women. Then there is a Global Student Entrepreneur Award. Then you have to be a student for that. Okay, now there are a bunch of grants here. Again, all these links are here. You can save the links and go and visit the links. The Amber grant, unfortunately or fortunately, most of the grants are for women and many are for minority women. There are some for men as well. The Amber grant is very popular because they have 10,000 every month and 25,000 every year. In fact, I just looked up the website. I think they are open for 25,000 right now. But as I said before, it's available only for women. The next one as well for women and minority women, Alice. Alice again has every month. You can go and take a look at it and apply. And I have talked to some of my clients who have applied to those grants. It will take anywhere from half an hour to an hour. One thing I will advise you is don't get discouraged. As in any other place, whom you know is important, equally important as what you know. What that means is you apply and just forget about it. I will guarantee you, you will get a rejection. So what do? You apply and then you really have to find a person who making the decision in that organization. There are several ways of getting to that person. You have to find your friends whom you know and whom they know in that granting organization and make sure that you follow through. So that is key. Following through an application is the key to getting the grant. So many of my clients come back and saying, I did not get the grant, and then I ask them, did you follow through? They said invariably no. So that's one of the reasons you have to make sure that you follow up on the grants. The third one is the Girl Boss is only for minority women, specifically for Black women. FedEx is for anybody who has a FedEx account. And FedEx gives you anywhere from 15,000 to 50,000. So I really want to encourage you to apply there. And NASC is National Association for Self-Employed. They give you many grants. It's a very small amount. Where there is a need, they give you the small amount of grant. It's I think 4,000. The next one is Cartier Women's Initiative Award is international. And it's a big money and big competition. That is again for women's only, but there is 100,000 for the first prize and 30,000 for the second prize. There are multiple second prize winners. In addition to that, there are several grants. There are several state grants, and there are several federal grants. Again, there is a link here. The first one is a website that you have to pay to subscribe. But you don't have to pay. You can go directly to several of the state grants. One I have given you the link is called Mass Growth Capital Corporation. Then Space Grant has become very popular. And Space Grant is for Boston-based businesses. And I think it's about 50,000. And some of my clients have applied to the Space Grant as well. Now, there are several grants in the federal grants. Again, there are two websites you can look into the federal grants. One of the big one in federal grants is what called SBIR. Again, there is a link here. SBIR is federal grants. It gives you millions of dollars. In fact, I had applied for SBIR grant some time ago. I got $3 million over 3 years. There is a element of what I call innovation. So whenever I start about innovation, people think that has to be high tech. It doesn't have to be. So you have to show what kind of innovation you're bringing to the table from your business innovation, not necessarily technology innovation, but the business innovation. One of my client was trying to get a grant, and his business was helping people with PhDs who are postdoctorals. They are looking for work. So that was quite different than a typical, what I call a job site. So that is a business innovation. So I encouraged him to apply for SBIR. So there are almost every department has an SBIR grant, including DOD. When I say DOD, you don't have to be a top clearance. You don't have to have any clearance. The DOD is this SBIR grant is for civilians, not for Army people, not for Navy, but civilians like you and me. So in addition to the DOD, which is about $2 billion for SBIR, there is a Department of Education, Department of Commerce, NIH, Department of Transportation. So almost any kind of a business you want to get in, there is innovation in the business, you can look through and apply for the SBIR grant. Okay, now let me get into the incubators and accelerators. It used to be different. Incubators are the agencies or the companies who are working with you just with an idea. And then they make sure that you get some money, you get the office space. So really they are incubating your business. Then the accelerators will kind of step in. Once your business is incubated, accelerator is going to give you some more money so that your business gets accelerated. But really the change or the nuances is really not there anymore. Everybody like a mass challenge, Y Combinator, code launch, Harvard Innovation Lab, MIT, Cubic, they all are, whether it's incubator or accelerator, they all are into helping this ecosystem of businesses. They will give you the seed money, they work with you, they will give you the lab space or the office space. MIT is very popular in that one, as well as Harvard Innovation Lab. But again, you don't have to be MIT alumni. You can apply to Code Launch or Cubic Labs, Y Combinator or Mass Challenge. And by the way, there are some more. What I would encourage you to do is really go into the Google and look into the incubators and accelerators. And again, you can pick one that applies to you. Okay, the Kickstarter, again, there is a link here. But many people have heard about Kickstarter, but the Kickstarter is not the only one. There is a Kickstarter, Indiegogo, they have different business models. Kickstarter is really, suppose you are looking for 100,000 and you get 100,000 or you get nothing. Whereas Indiegogo is different. If you're looking for 100 and your campaign gets you 50,000, Indiegogo gives you 50,000. But none of them is cheap. They give you, they take anywhere between 3 to 5%. And on top of that, they take some money out of every transaction. Okay, so that's the key here. So it's not cheap. And Mighty Cause, again, if you are in non-profit, that is probably one of them, Mighty Cause. So as well as Patreon, I don't know how you call it. Many people think about GoFundMe. GoFundMe is not really to raise money for your business, but really for your personal emergency situation. If something happens to the breadwinner, and a friend of you may put up a GoFundMe, and you can or she can raise money for that specific emergency situation. So don't think of GoFundMe as getting money for your business. Then there are again Circle Up, Fundable. The last one, Start Engine, is a little bit different because this is a crowdfunding, but on an equity basis. So it's really a combination of crowdfunding, and they take away a little bit of equity from your company as well. So again, if you want to take a look at this, again, Google it and apply for Start Engine. By the way, all these are set up online. Okay, now let us go into the debt financing. As I said, debt financing is something that you get a loan and you have to return the loan. So any agency will make sure that you have either a collateral or you have the right credit rating, and then they have a process. Again, Middlesex will go through that. They have a process for you to lend the money. So that's really the debt financing. And as I said before, bank loans have different types of bank loans, revolving credit. They give you the money for working capital, or best way is really get a line of credit. So you can only use up the money what you need, so that you don't have to use up all the money. Now, if your credit rating is pretty low, if you don't really have a whole lot of collaterals, then there is a place where you can go, what they call it, a peer-to-peer lending. There, obviously, they give you the money, but the interest rate is going to be much higher than, for example, Middlesex Savings Bank. But there is a way to get the money. And then community development financial institutions, you take a look at that. So they have a way of getting you the money. Then the equipment leasing, may not be for every business, but is for really like a kitchen, for example, where the restaurant, right? The kitchen equipment may cost a lot of money, 100,000. So for that, you have some companies where they will give you the money right away on equipment leasing basis. Some again, invoice and receivable financing is again, if you are in already a business, but you are looking for cash flow and you have say 100,000 coming in, but there is a 3-month waiting period, right? So you need a cash right away. You go to one of these companies, they give you the money. Again, it's a loan or lending, quick and short-term lending, and you pay off when you get your money. Now, the last one is Small Business Administration. When I say SBA, everybody thinks SBA gives you the loan. It's not. SBA only guarantees the loan, and really you still have to go through the individual bank, like Middlesex, I believe they are also part of SBA. So you have to go through the loan, you have to go through the bank to get the loan. Okay, here is my chart here. So you apply at a bank decides if yes, SBA will back the loan, and then the bank underwrites, and if the loan is approved, bank is the one closing and servicing the loan. Again, borrower works with the bank, not with the SBA. SBA is only there to guarantee the bank. There are different types of SBA loans. Again, the typical is, let me get you that one. Okay, I think, hold on a minute. Okay, this is this one type of loan is called 7A, and there is another one called 504. And all these loans are pretty much, they run the same way. And obviously they are giving you the loan, and there is a 85% of guarantee on loans up to 150, 75% loans greater than 150. But again, these details you can go through the SBA site. They have all these details. So I'm not going to go through these things. Okay. So to be eligible for the SBA loan, you have to be operated for profit and not to exceed SBA size standards. What I mean by size standard is depending upon your kind of business, you have to have a certain number of employees and your revenue into that kind of a range. It's not a big deal of that. You can look into that. And once you get the money, you can't put that money back in real estate or investment or etc. You have to spend the money on your business. Okay, this is the 504 structure. This is really in addition to the SBA. There is another entity called CDC along with SBA to guarantee the loan, and still you have to go through the bank. This is called a 504 loan. Again, similar criteria. Okay, in addition to that, there is they call it a micro loan. There is a direct loan up to 50,000, and the interest rates are below 9% fixed and up to 6-year repayment. Again, this can be applied for working capital or for inventory or for machinery or refinancing a business. So that's different in addition to the other types of loan. Okay, let me check my time. Okay, now let me go to the equity financing, right? This is probably the one of the ways many of the small businesses get funding. So when you say equity financing, means you are giving up a percentage of your company in terms of equity of the company. So the one of the best way to get the money is you have to team up with another partner. So you can put up some money along with your partner. That's the way you get your money. And then again, depending upon how much your partner puts up, you structure your company. It could be 60-40, 80-20, whatever it is, 90-10 or 50-50. Okay. Now, if you are a small business already and you have a customer or multiple customers, that's the best way to get the money is to talk to your customer. They may be able to put up some money, and in the return, you may be able to give them a percentage of your company. Again, that's the equity financing. So that's another way. Talk to your customer to see whether you can get some money from the customer. That's called another company financing. Now, the third one everybody knows is the IPO, which is if you are a business, you want to raise money, you can go public. It's called initial public offering. So again, the misnomer here is I want to go IPO because I want to cash out and I want to get rich. But remember, IPO is there for you to raise the money so that you can expand your business. And it so happens that after the lockup period, it could be 6 months, you can liquidate certain amount of your stocks. And you cannot liquidate or you cannot sell all of your equity. There is obviously a restriction, but you can sell a percentage. Say you want to sell 1% of your company. That is the way you get your money. That's the way you get rich. So by selling a percentage of your company according to what they call a vesting schedule. Again, you can't sell all of your company, you can't get out. However, if another partner or if another company has financed you, they will be able to get out before you can get out. So that's the way the IPO works. Again, as I said before, initial public offering, you get the money so that you can expand your business. That's the primary goal. Okay, now that's the public market, that's a stock exchange. You can list your company into New York or S&P or NASDAQ. Now, the other whole set of funding source, equity funding, again, is the private market. Many of the attendees here this may not be applicable, but for some it is, especially when you are starting up, what I call a set of angel investors. And then I will go through venture capital and then the private equity. Okay, angel investors, used to be that angel investor was a person with some money want to invest in another company. And so that used to be an individual investor putting his own money into your company. But nowadays, what is happening is all the angel investors have pooled together. They have their own, what I call a syndicate. They have their own quote unquote companies, really investing companies. And that's the way they run the business now. They are running like a business. What it means is the angel investors, most of the time, they have their own company. It's an LLC. And what they do, they have process. Okay, I was one of the person running the Thai Boston Angel, so I kind of familiar with this angel investing company. So usually what they do is then you need to apply. And again, even there, they have kind of what I call a standardized application process. And you still have to, now you have to go through a company called gust.com. Again, that used to be pretty simple. Now they want you to be a member of the gust.com. They charge you some money. But many times you can apply for multiple angel investing companies through one application. So my advice to you is you do some research, because even these angel investing companies are kind of specialized. Again, go back to the Thai Boston Angels. Most of them, they invest in technology. They invest in up and coming, what I call the up and coming Facebook, for example. They invest in many of these technology companies, web-based technology companies, and that's their focus. But if you look at some of the other angel investing companies, they are into different investing, including construction, including pretty much any of your companies. Again, the last one is Golden Seeds is for women only entrepreneurs. The rest of them are applicable and available to any, whether it's a man or a woman. Okay, and now again, VCs and PEs may not be applicable, but there may be some people who have already gone through the seed investing by angels. The next round, what I call a venture capital, if you are looking for the next round, the second round, and third round, so you have to go through what they call a venture capitals, then the private equity. And private equity and venture capital, they're all different in the types of companies they invest in, the level of capital they invested, the amount of equity they get, and when at what stage they get involved. Okay. Now, before I get to, let me make it very clear. Okay. Again, most of these attendees, you may not be interested in private equity, because private equities are companies. They usually invest in companies that are in trouble, big companies, okay? Billions of dollars they invest. They kind of take over the big company in trouble, and they merge with somebody else to make it bigger. Then they sell it. So really, most of the people here are not interested in private equity, but I'm going to list some of the private equity companies as well. So the next one is really VCs. Again, there is a strict process here. You have to apply, and you have to have a business plan. You have to have a what I call a pitch deck, set of slides. And then again, as I said before, you have to follow through. You have to know somebody where you are applying. Better yet, if you get introduced by a person in that particular company, that's your chance of getting the money is higher. But nonetheless, what you have to do is you have to follow through the application and make sure that yours is in you get called by a set of people for an interview, because without the interview you do not get any money. So make sure that you get into presenting your business in front of people who are deciding. So that's the process for every of these companies. Again, these are half a dozen or so, but again, my advice is for you to Google and find out the VC company aligned with your business. Again, if you are into hotel or if you are into starting up a restaurant, you have to apply to a specific type of VC firm. If you are into high tech, if you are into next app, again, there's a different type of business venture, business VC firm you have to apply. So my advice to you is look at their portfolio. Any of these companies have their portfolio, means what companies they have invested before. So because they do invest in a similar type of companies in the future. So look at their portfolio and see whether it fits yours fits into their portfolio before you apply. And again, they look at the size of investment. Okay, if they are usually investing in companies that need millions of dollars, if you need only 100,000, you better off going with a venture, better off going with a seed investor called angel investor as opposed to VCs. Okay, the next one I'm just going to flash you. This is private equity. Again, people may not be interested in that, but I'll let you know that there are a bunch of private equity companies as well. Okay, let me once you get your money, I'll tell you some of the statistics. This is the real data from 1,000 startup companies that SCORE interviewed over the years. And how did they get the money? Believe it or not, over 60% of the companies got started by personal funds, friends and families, what I call owner financing. Then the 27% got income from another job. Then as you go down here, borrowing from the friends, then bank loan about 11%, and then keeps going down. The last one is crowdfunding. As you can see, there is a lot of crowdfunding in the air, but really not too many businesses get funded by crowdfunding. Now, once you have the money, this is how those startup companies invested the money. Purchasing the equipment highest, purchasing the inventory, marketing, leasing, product development, hiring, and obviously don't forget you have to pay yourself. So anytime you have a business plan or a cash flow, my advice is, unless you are again independently wealthy, you have to put yourself some money for you so that you can fully 100% of your time you can invest in your business. So you have to pay for your own self. Okay, I think we have about 12 more minutes. So Steve, I will open it up for questions and answers.
Okay, great. Let me read one question that's in a Q&A, and then there are a few that are in the chat. Oh, and by the way, I will repost the links for the chat for those who missed it, who joined us a little bit after we started. Okay, so the first question is from Andrea Green, and it is, could you provide insight into Middlesex Bank's decision not to engage in mentoring programs within underserved communities? Additionally, are there plans to establish a hybrid location in Boston to better serve customers? Lastly, does Middlesex Bank offer any grant programs specifically tailored for startups, women, or other demographic groups? Jeff, do you want to take that one?
Sure, Steve, I can. I'm just pulling up the Q&A here. So, yeah, no, we've focused. We're certainly headquartered in the Metro West area for a number of years, and have branched out further into Worcester. We haven't branched into Boston. It'd be certainly a large undertaking for us to proceed in that direction, and we haven't done it as of yet. We do work a fair amount relative to we don't have particular startups, particularly related to women or particular demographics, but we do work a fair amount with folks at SCORE to refer mentoring for folks that are startup type companies. And we do work, there's references to Shankar referenced it in his program, help with the SBA, 7A loans and 504 loans. They work through the folks at, at Middlesex or any bank that would be working on them. And but those are, enhancements from the SBA that would allow us to look at a loan that might have a limited operating history. And I know we focus a fair amount on, business plans and such when there's a limited operating history. And I know that both folks at Dave's team and the folks at SCORE, a big focus on business plan development and projection development is a key part of reviewing any opportunity.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yep.
Give me 1 second here. I'm just going to post repost the list of links here. And for those who joined us afterward, okay, those are set to go with that. Good. So let me see. A question came in from Cheryl about, let me just find it here. It was about the space grant. Give me a second. Hi, my name is Cheryl Stokes, and my SCORE mentor is Robert Welch. Can any business apply for a space grant?
Okay, I can take that, Steve. There are a couple of limitations. The reason the space grant they made it available is 2 reasons. One is obviously employment. So your business has to create some jobs. Other one is you need to have a brick and mortar. Preferably in some of those areas, they recommend that there are quite a few empty buildings. So they have to fill it up. So you need to have you need to lease or have some kind of a office space in that kind of area. There are a couple of areas they're recommending. And so much so that the last round, by the way, is it's going to be closing end of this month. They put a restriction. I don't agree with that, but they put a restriction that you need to have a signed lease in that area before you apply. It was not that way, obviously, many people don't get the lease before they get the money. So they used to give you the money and then you could lease the space. Now, I don't know the reason why they did it. You have to have a lease before you get to apply.
Thank you. Let's see. Steph Davis. Hold on a second. Here you go. Steph says, I have a preclinical drug firm. Any info on an SBIC loan and what dollar range would that an SBIC loan be appropriate for?
Anytime there is innovation, when you said preclinical drug, I'm sure there's a new drug. Absolutely, you do qualify. It really depends on how much you need. Again, as I said, millions of dollars is not unheard of. As I said, I got 3 million over the course of 3 years. The best place is probably NIH, but that's not the only place. Okay, I think you should go through and see what other places you can apply. Again, as I said, I will be glad to work with you, but you need to do some research and you absolutely qualify.
Okay, great. Amy Nicastro Clark writes, how do I set up an appointment with the SBA to talk about a healing space I'm creating in Brookline? And then a further question, where do you find Boston Harbor Angels to tie Boston Angels and tie Boston Angels, etc.?
Steve, what is the question again? Where do I find? How do I find?
Well, let's start with the first one. How do I set up an appointment with the SBA to talk about the healing space I'm creating in Boston?
There is nobody from SBA. By the way, we are not SBA, as Steve probably told you. We are SCORE. How do I think we just have to call. Steve, any idea on that one, SBA question?
Well, I mean, not direct to the SBA, but, we certainly work with SBA programs, so it'd be a matter of determining, again, looking at your business plan and determining if an SBA-backed type program might be an opportunity or an alternative for you. I can't speak to, Shankar mentioned the microloans that come direct from the SBA. I don't have any insight there into how you connect directly, but we'd have to look into that for you, because those would be direct SBA loans.
Right. That's correct.
Yeah, for the SBA microloan, well, the way to get onto the SBA website, they have a lot of information related to loans and so on, and grants. SBA.org in Massachusetts, and that should get you. You should be able to find it. It's a good website, I think. Very helpful.
Yeah.
Let's see.
There another component to the question, Steve?
Yeah. Where do you find Boston Harbor Angels and Thai Boston Angels, etc.? I'm not sure.
Oh, I mean, they're all, I mean, I would just Google him. I mean, there is a web, everything has all angel investors nowadays have a website. So Google that, and Boston Thai Angels, Google it, and it will give you a link. And then you can click on it, and then everything is there. How do you apply, all the things. It's the same way for every angel investor. There is obviously a website, and then all the information on the website. And then, what I would recommend is, if it fits you, and then in fact, most of those websites have names of the people who are making the decision. So see whether you can get or find somebody whom you know. And then that way you can really go through them recommendation instead of applying quote unquote cold. So again, Google, that's where I will start.
Good. Okay, thank you. Jose Polino, hi there. Are there any funding or funding grants or loans for real estate? Somebody want to pick that up?
I can't speak to necessarily the grants. Loans would be more the SBA 504 program, which would be owner occupied financing. For a business that is both owning the real estate and occupying the property more than 50%. No particular loans, specialized funding loans or grants for the investment real estate. That would be more traditional bank financing if you were simply looking to purchase a property for tenanting,
Okay.
third party tenanting.
Okay, great. One from Mohammed. Are there any specific banks or organizations that invest in people with disabilities?
I'm quiet, Steve, because in my experience or in my research and everything, it's minorities and women have a preference, and veterans have a preference. I have not really come across, maybe the disabled fit into the minorities, I'm not sure. Jeff, David, any idea on that?
Yeah, I think. Well, go ahead, Jeff.
Go ahead, Dave.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, we lend to all kinds of businesses, and whether they're who owns them is irrelevant, to be honest with you. We don't get involved in grants, obviously, but as far as lending goes, it's an even playing field.
But the question is that what is the question? Preference, or what is it? If it is disabled, any grant, if it is again woman or man, that's what I said. It doesn't say anything about disabled. Any person who is disabled can apply.
Okay.
Okay, but may not be any preference, as Jeff said, may not be any preference, but anybody can apply.
Okay. Good. Amy is asking, how do I get a score advisor? I'll take that one. Go on to www.score.org. And if you want to get one who's local, there's an area where you can put in your zip code, and then they'll match you to kind of a form where you put in, it asks a couple of questions, your contact info, what type of help you're looking for. And then we'll get back to you within a day or two with a couple of potential appointments with mentors, and then you can take it from there. Okay, so hang on a second. Pascal says, writes, I don't even seem to be able to I don't seem to be able to copy and paste the links, and don't see the option to save the chat. Can these links be emailed? Well, let me see. Pascal, what you will get is, starting tomorrow, you can go on to score.org/Boston. And then there's a drop-down list that has, under local workshops, it says previously recorded webinar. The recording with the graphics of this webinar will be all posted there. So you should be able to get what you need on that. Cheryl asks a similar question. So once again, score.org in Boston, local workshops, previously recorded webinar. Starting tomorrow, you should be able to get that. Jose, asks, are there any organizations granting grants for childcare centers or private schools? Somebody want to handle that?
Again, some of these grants, for grants, I don't think they care. There is it means, you can apply, absolutely. For the grants, it can be in any legitimate business.
Let me just add one comment to that. Many towns have, I think in general, they're called education foundations. And they're often kind of nonprofit foundations that support, I've seen them give grants to childcare centers. So that might be worth checking out for where your city or town that you live in. Yep. Let me see. Let me switch over to the Q&A here. Anonymous says, we're looking to refinance our current business loan. Any advice on doing this? Jeff, you want to handle that, refinancing a current loan?
Sure. I think regardless of new or existing, we'd look at the attributes of the business, the cash flow position and such, the annual cash flow, look at the strength of the guarantor. So I think it would come down to the attributes of the business, whether we were refinancing or doing a new loan. So that would be the process. Certainly, talking with one of Dave's folks would be a starting point, or with Middlesex.
Okay, thank you. Marion asks, are you sharing the literature today? So much to remember. Will score.org have this info? Yes, go to score.org/Boston. Under local workshops, previously recorded webinars, that will have all the links and graphics. And also score.org has a huge library of other literature related to business plans and cash flow forecasts and so on. When in doubt, just feel free to ask to talk to a mentor, and we might be able to help you out with that. Okay, Jihan asks, what are the steps that has to be followed for a business loan, please? Jeff, you want to take that? For a business loan?
Yeah, I can certainly talk through a number of steps. Dave, you can stop me if I say something wrong, but be an application process. We start by chatting with the applicant, determining what the need is, and then the typical. I don't want to go through the entire process here on what time we have left, but it would be gathering of personal information, personal financial and tax return information, and then historical information on the business to start the initial assessment as to what the need would be and what the possible financing could be as a jumping off point. Certainly much more involved than that, but would that be a starting point?
Thank you, Jeff. Valerie writes, hello, this is Valerie. I have two questions. One, are grants given only at a certain time of the year? And two, are there any for seniors? Shankar, you want to address that?
Sure. Yes, certain time of the year, absolutely. So I would advise you to take a look at that. Each of the website, they do tell you. Some are every month, but still there is a timeline, and some are annually. There is a timeline. So take a look at on the website. They update the website periodically. So that's the way you know. What is the second part of the question?
Are there any grants for seniors, targeted for seniors?
Again, any grants are available to any, there is no discrimination age group wise. Absolutely. I think you mean you have to be over 18. Jeff can answer that one, but other than that, there is no limitation.
Hmm.
Jeff, you have to be over 18?
I believe so, yes, correct.
Okay.
Thank you. Michael writes, I've designed a patent pending tidal turbine and to start the business, I need a lot of money to test and validate it works. Are there best ways to start a climate sensitive energy community that may become a utility company?
What is the question again? I'm missing the question.
I have designed, there's a lot going on here, Michael. I've started a patent pending tidal turbine and see to start the business I need. I need a lot of money to test and validate that it works. Are there best ways to start a climate sensitive energy company that may become a utility company? Let me suggest this, Michael. Let me suggest that if you want to pursue this requires a little more conversation. I would suggest that you inquire with score.org and state your question here, and we'll try to get you linked up with a SCORE mentor who is familiar with the topics that you're bringing, that you're raising, both in terms of the industry and the patent pending, the patent situation. And then finally, well, not quite finally, they keep coming in. This is great. Leslie Ann writes, do you have to have an account with Middlesex Savings Bank before applying for a business loan? Jeff?
Yeah, we would ultimately require an account in conjunction with the loan, a deposit account, but we don't, it's a precursor to, looking to apply. So it'd be in conjunction with the loan if we were to get to the closing of the loan.
Jihan writes, for how long does the business have to run to get approved for a business loan?
I think that varies greatly. It depends on the cash flow. I know that working on projections alone, more difficult to get a loan. We might prefer the applicant to SCORE to look at their business plan and do a little more reviewing of that to determine. And then a lot of times it will come down to the strength of the guarantor and the financial backing outside or behind the company to assess that. So that there's a very variety of ways that question could be answered depending on the applicant.
Okay, great. Well, I think that about wraps it up. Thank you very much all for attending, and thank you, Jeff and Dave and Shankar. We very much appreciate
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
it. Score.org, just go on there and hopefully we'll be able to help you. Have a good afternoon, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.